This video will describe how to get a local installation of MySQL running on your computer. Specifically, we are going to talk about MariaDB. I've hosted an installation of MariaDB, and if you unzip this, it should create a folder that looks something like this, with the folders backup, bin, data, temp, etc. The very first thing that we need to do, and we will only need to do this once, is we need to modify the initialization file so that this program can actually work properly. The initialization program is called my.ini, and it's located in the bin folder of where you extracted this. This is going to be a one-time operation. You can edit it from the context menu. Again, this is for Windows. Or I'm going to choose to open it with Sublime Text. Inside of this folder, there's a lot of text that looks like gobbledygook, but the comments have hashtags in front of them. And anything that doesn't have a hashtag is a specific command for the database engine. This database is going to run on port 3306, and it does not have a password. I've placed in some boilerplate paths over here, and we're going to need to update these paths in order for this to actually work, and this has to reflect the exact path. So for example, the nomenclature is /, and you're going to lose the C. So for example, if this were located in C users Bob the Builder work programs MySQL, the path on line 25 would need to be /users /Bob etc. The specific location where I have, and we're talking about the root right now, is in C users. So if we look up here, it's C users PC COSEC work curriculum web MySQL. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go inside of here, and I'm going to paste this. And for reference, I'm going to transpose this into what it needs to look like. Here, I can delete. So this was the actual Windows path. This is the path that MySQL needs. And so, here we go. I'm going to delete that out. I'm going to copy this, and now I'm going to replace. So I'm going to replace parent path MySQL with this path I have over here, users PC COSEC work curriculum web MySQL. I'll find this, replace it, replace it, replace it, replace it, replace it, replace it, replace, 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 replace. Sure, that's in the header. Okay. This is now initialized. This is now set up for initialization. So we're done with my.ini. That's a one-time deal here. The next thing we need to know is that running the MySQL is going to be it's going to be a two-step process. So the first step is we need to start the database engine. I'm going into the terminal of my choice over here. I'm not sure if that really is going to work. Okay, so I navigated over to the directory, the root level directory of MySQL, and I'm going to run the command that starts the database engine. The command is bin mysqld.exe, and I'm going to run it with the option for a console. That's relatively important. If you don't get errors, and I'll sort of zoom out, you'll see that your database will start, and it'll say that the MariaDB has started on a particular port. This is a good thing. Because we did the console, I'm already over in this same. We're going to have a second terminal open. And we'd like to be able to get into the console and actually manipulate the database. This console is useful and helpful in setting up the database and initializing tables, etc. So let's go over and bring up the console. The command is going to be slightly different. Notice that the previous command was MySQL D. This command is going to be MySQL, again in the bin folder. So in order to bring up the console, we have to type bin MySQL. And we have to specify that the user, in this case the user is going to be root. And I've gotten into the MariaDB. I'm now in my database. So the next step that we have to do over here is we are going to need to create a database. So let's say create database students. I've now created a database, and now if I want to use that database, I would say use students. Again, that's a sort of one-time initialization thing that you would do. You would only want to create a database once. If I were to create the database students again, I would get an error for this. Another important feature that you should know how to do is to turn off the database engine. In order to stop this program in a way that's useful and repeatable, you have to make the call to shut down. And that will turn off your database engine. Then to exit the Maria database terminal, in your second terminal, you would type exit. Again, this is confusing, but you have to understand that the console is different from the engine that's actually running the database. And once you sort of begin this understanding, it becomes clear. So my database engine is now running. I can go back in and I can run the console. Because I've created the database students, I can now use students. If in the database students, I want to do something, for example, creating a table. If I want to create a table here that has an ID of int of name and a home, I can enter commands into this, and I can I can see that there's an empty set of students inside of here, but it is in fact possible to insert data into the students and select everything from the students. So now I'm manipulating data inside of my database that's running on my database engine. So this is the terminal endpoint, and this is the database engine. If I wanted to do something perhaps a little bit more sophisticated, like have a program go in and access. So here I've got an Express server, and I have my Express, and I've imported MySQL. I'm going to have to change my database name to recall students, right? Because that was the name of the day. I probably should have chosen a different name than students, a database named students and a table named students, because there are difference. It's obviously different. Table named students and a database named students. Way to go, Paul. But anyway, this is my database name. Here, I'm going to select the table from students, where the ID is equal to 1. And this is a query that we could have run over here, right? So I could say select S name from students, where ID equals 1. And I've selected the name George. But it's also possible to do this in the context of a query over here. And you want to make sure you're using the question mark so that it's properly escaped and preventing an injection. So I'm going to go over, I'm going to leave my database right now. And I'm going to leave this without shutting down my database engine. I'm going to navigate into the folder where my server file is located. And I'm going to call node on index.js, and I've started my server over here. At this point, I can open up a tab at 127.0.0.1, and you can see that this web page has fetched George, the name George, out of the database. If I were to add additional users into here right now, so let's go back into this database. Let's say it's going to be 2. And I go back and I restart my server over here because I've made a change. If I look at this web page, the site can't be reached. I have an error, right? Because the user 2 doesn't exactly exist. And I'm getting all sorts of error inside. We can't read this property of an undefined entity. However, if I were to go back into my database engine at the console and enter new entries into here, so for example, if I were to call bin, or it's in MySQL, bin Windows key. Right? I'm back inside of here. I want to use the database students. And now, let's say I've got a new command where I want to insert students value 2 in John over here. Okay. Now, if I run this index.js, I've inserted a user into spot 2. So this is now plucking that out of the database instead. When you're done, don't forget that you do have a database engine running to make all of this happen. And so the most consistent way to make sure that you actually shut down this database is to go into here and type shutdown. That will kill off the server. That'll make sure that it's properly shut down, and then you can exit out of this thing.